Hello, Grill fam. You're watching The Hill with April Ryan, where we bring you the latest in politics every week. Let's begin right here in Washington, D.C., where President Biden is coming under fire after classified documents from his time as vice president were discovered in his personal office across the street from the White House, located at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. While speaking to reporters at a press conference in Mexico City earlier this week, Biden said he was surprised to learn that the documents were taken to the office after his term ended in 2017. He also stated that he is fully cooperating with authorities. I recently spoke with Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia and Kurt Schmoke, president of the University of Baltimore and former Baltimore City mayor, about their thoughts on the matter.
There's no indication that President Biden knew they were there. As soon as they were discovered, they were turned over to the proper authorities. This is in stark contrast to the situation with President Trump. Not only does it appear that he knew the documents were there and bragged about it, he, when asked to return them, has refused. They were negotiating, and they had to do a search warrant to get at least some of the documents. There's no indication right now. His lawyers wouldn't sign off on the idea that all of the documents have been turned over. There is a difference between intentionally holding the documents that you're not supposed to have and having some discovered in your office that you didn't know were there and turning them over immediately to the proper authorities.
Well, I think the situation that the president now faces is twofold, but I think it's a much smaller legal problem than it is a political problem. It's embarrassing because of all the hoopla surrounding the documents that were found at President Trump's home in Florida. And now you've got a group of people in the House of Representatives who already were interested in exploring impeaching him, or the committee that wants to investigate all the investigations that are going on, the so-called weaponization of government. So I think that the President Biden faces a big political problem in the House. I don't think he's going to get convicted, in the Senate. But the fact that they are even talking about impeachment, I think, is truly distracting. But unfortunately, it's a political problem that by inadvertence he has fallen into.
Let's stay in the district. It's been several weeks since the January 6th committee investigating the U.S. Capitol attack in 2021 recommended that the Department of Justice file several criminal charges against former President Donald John Trump for inciting the deadly insurrection. I recently spoke with Congressman Benny Thompson about whether he believes Trump will face criminal charges.
What we presented was based on the facts that our committee discovered, and obviously ours was oversight, and we're not prosecutorial. And so that's why we passed it on to the Department of Justice and said, look, here's some things beyond the scope of our committee, but it concerns us that former President Trump was involved in these things, along with some other people, but he primarily, and you should look at it. And obviously, we made sure that all that information that we spent 18 months collecting was transferred. And we'll let the process work itself out.
Now to Brazil, where the country saw an unprecedented uprising by far-right protesters. On Sunday, pro-Bolsonaro supporters stormed the country's congressional building, the Supreme Court, and presidential palace, all in an attempt to dismantle President Lula's authority. In recent months, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro touted false claims of voter fraud as a reason for his defeat. So over the weekend, insurrectionists tried to take matters into their own hands and prevent the transfer of power. theGrio recently spoke with Dr. Cheryl Johnson, a professor at Wayne State University, who believes that Brazilian conservatives fear progressive politics.
Brazil is really a majority Black nation, or majority Afro-Brazilian nation. But if you look at the Brazilian government, at the top levels, it's overwhelmingly white. And so that's a problem. But Lula has tried to diversify his cabinet and tried to make strategic appointments of Black leaders and Black activists to be more inclusive, to create a more inclusive government as he pursues poverty reduction and equality, social and racial equality policies. Many Brazilians, especially Brazilian conservative leaders, aren't comfortable with the possibility that more progress could be made and that people, workers, women, Black Brazilians could be empowered for the first time in history.
I'm sure you've seen all the videos, those viral videos of the 15 chaotic rounds of voting for Representative Kevin McCarthy to become the next Speaker of the House. But there was one woman at the center of it all who kept the House in order. Her name is Cheryl Johnson. The 63-year-old has worked in the House for nearly 20 years and served as a clerk for at least 4. She holds a law degree from Howard University, and she completed the senior management program at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. During last week's weekly Democratic Leader press conference, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries told theGrio that Johnson did a fine job holding down the fort.
I think Cheryl Johnson, one who's a historic figure in her own right, is doing a very good job under difficult circumstances.
Depending on who you are and where you grew up, you have a different idea of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But for me, I was 9 months old when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. I grew up in a family that regaled me always about the civil rights movement, and Dr. King loomed large for the equality for all, for first-class citizenship for all, particularly for people who look like me. On this King holiday, I talked to the daughter of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King. She's a minister in her own right who gave us a bit of a sermon on issues that we face today. Some of the same issues that Dr. King fought and died for. The issue of hate.
We don't know the power of love because that's what Dr. King did. He just bring people together. He brought them with a certain spirit and a heart and attitude. We don't understand love in this country. We think love means, oh, that's just weak and wimpy and people get away with stuff. No, no, no. Dr. King and his love did not allow people to get away. He used the energy of love to expose, not just to the public, but sometimes people need to see their own stuff. And sometimes when it's so much in you, you don't see it until somebody confronts it with something else.
That was a lot, but that's it for The Hill with April Ryan. We'll see you next week with all the latest news and politics. Peace.